Morning everyone, it's Emily here at Textile Express, and today I just thought I would talk to you a little bit about how we can insulate our homes better using curtains and blinds. So we actually lose about a third of our heat through our windows in our homes. If you take into account poorly fitted doors, then that would increase as well. So I just thought I'd show you a few different options that we can use the curtains and the blinds and different types of lining to help prevent that heat loss. Our most popular option for a thermal lining would be this blackout. So this is the ivory colour, and it's also available in a white. Now historically these used to be quite stiff and quite rubbery, and so it put a lot of people off. But as you can see, they've now got a really nice drape, a nice weight, and that is actually our most popular lining. So it goes through, it's what we would call a 3-pass lining. So not only does it have thermal properties, but it's also blackout. So not only is it going to help to keep heat in when it's cold outside, but when it's really warm outside, it will also help reflect the sunlight back and prevent the room from heating up too much. So you've got double benefits for both seasons. So that's a really great lining option if you're selecting new curtains to have made and you've got slightly drafty windows, or perhaps you've got a door that you want a good thermal lining for. Now if you're thinking perhaps you live in a really old building, perhaps you've got single glazing and you're restricted with listings or something like that, then another option would be to add in a third layer, so we could have interlining in the curtains. I'll just show you on this curtain. It's one of our old example curtains. So this one we've got the cotton lining, and then we've got the medium weight interlining, and just having that extra third layer helps trap more air, stops more heat being lost out through your windows. So again, we'll just up the insulation in your home. We've got a few different options in our interlinings. That would be the heaviest weight option. You'll see it's quite textured. So again, in terms of creating pockets of air and stopping the heat transferring out through the window, that's a really great option, particularly if you combined it with this thermal lining. We also do a medium weight cotton, so that comes in a creamy colour and also a white if you've got a really light coloured face fabric, and perhaps something like these trees. And there's also a synthetic option too. If you're looking at having us make them for you, that's no problem. We've got a really highly skilled team. They've done it hundreds of times before. But if you're looking at it thinking, I'd like to make my own curtains, I want that extra little bit of bump that not only is going to add with the thermal properties, but it also just adds a bit of body to the curtain. So it just makes them look a little bit thicker, a little bit grander perhaps, I don't know if that's the right word. So another option would be our bonded lining. So that has a lining and the interlining bonded together. So rather than having to sew 3 layers, you can get away with just sewing the 2 layers, but you've still got that little bit of extra thickness. So again, that's just an example of our bonded lining. So both options are great, but if we're really looking at thermal rather than adding body to the curtains, first of all, I'd be looking at our blackout thermal lining. Secondly, if you've got really drafty windows, or if you're really looking to go for maximum insulation, then I'd be looking at adding in a third layer of interlining. Another important thing to discuss would be the fit of your curtains and when at night you're drawing the curtains. So if you're really looking to have the maximum insulation power, then you want to be drawing your curtains at dusk before the temperature really drops outside. That doesn't give the warm air any chance to escape as the increase in temperature between your inside and the outside. So we're looking drawing the curtains or your blinds at dusk. Also, in terms of fit of your curtains, the fuller the curtain, the more body you've got in your curtain, the more fabric is going to be between your room and of your window, and therefore the greater insulation you're going to have. So the more fabric that's between the two, the less heat loss you will get out of your room. So think about that. We would always work to at least double fullness if we were making curtains in our workroom, but you could even go for 2.5 times fullness, particularly if it was a really drafty door. I know in my home the worst part for heat loss is our entrance doorway. There's a really sort of quite a poor single glazed window and then a door that's just not very well sealed. So I've made a huge door curtain and it makes a huge difference to stopping the drafts. It's really, really full, really, really thick. I've gone for that combination of the blackout thermal lining and then with this heavyweight interlining, and honestly it makes such a huge difference to heat being lost from the home. Now the other thing to consider on curtains is making sure that you've got enough so when you draw your curtains you're getting that overlap. It's no good having really skimpy curtains that are you're sort of stretching to get them to close together. You want them nice and full, and as you draw them you want a slight overlap of the fabric, again just so we've not got any drafts coming through. Any way we can stop the drafts is going to make a huge difference. Now you might be watching this thinking this is all very well, but I'm not a curtains person. I'm definitely a Roman blind fan or perhaps a roller blind fan. Same applies. If we're making Roman blinds for you, there is the option of the blackout thermal lining. Again, like I said before, it is our most popular lining. And there is also the option of having the interlining as well. Sorry, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but the extra layer is going to add thermal properties and also add some body to your blind, which can look more attractive. The other option when thinking about how you're fitting your blind, obviously if it's going within a recess, if we're making them, then we're going to make sure that we've got a little gap as possible, so we're not letting any drafts or any heat past the blind. But obviously there will always be a very small gap because the Roman blind needs to be able to open and close freely within your recess. If you've got the space and drafts really are an issue, then perhaps consider fitting your blind outside of the recess. If you can take it a bit wider than the window and a bit above the window, you may just find that it adds to those thermal properties just having a bigger area covered. Or even better, perhaps look at a blind and a curtain combination. So with the Roman blind, you've got that first layer to help insulate the windows, and then drawing the curtains is then adding in an extra layer again and preventing any heat from escaping, which would be the main aim of the game at the moment, particularly going into winter. The only other thing I would say to perhaps consider would be when you're hanging your curtains, or perhaps thinking about making new curtains, would be to consider the height, particularly if you've got a radiator under the window. So if you have a radiator underneath your window, obviously it's not going to do any good to have full length curtains that you're then drawing. The heat from the heater is blaring and all the heat will be trapped behind the curtain and escaping straight away through the window. So if you've got a radiator below the window, we would generally recommend finishing your curtains about 10 to 15 centimeters above the radiator. That's going to allow for air to circulate into the room rather than getting caught up under the curtain and escaping straight out of the window. Also, you may be looking at this thinking, this is all great tips, thank you very much, but I've already got a pair of curtains and at the moment I don't want to be spending money getting new curtains, even if it is going to save me money on my bills. Well, a great alternative is to use a loose lining tape. I know that sounds perhaps a little bit confusing if you've not heard about it before, but basically it means we can sew up a lining, perhaps out of the blackout thermal lining, perhaps we'll do a combination of the blackout thermal and the interlining, and the lining tape has a little pocket at the top that means that it sits just over the top of your lining and then hooks onto your existing header tape. Now that's fantastic because you're adding in that extra layer without having to replace your current curtains. We will be doing a tutorial on how to make loose linings, so if at the moment that all seems a little bit confusing, then stay tuned because there will be a new tutorial on how to make loose linings coming in a couple of weeks. I think that covers just about everything for today. But if you do have any questions, just pop them in the box below, and there'll also be all the links to the different fabrics and linings that we featured here today. Thank you very much, and I'll see you soon.